Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Healthy Entrepreneur Show. My name is Maxine Choy. I'm your host, and the Healthy Entrepreneur Show is a enterprise that recognizes Black wealth through business education. We also aim to inspire individuals who are either entrepreneurs or not to live as healthy life as possible, to encourage you through our stories to just keep pressing on, keep going, no matter what obstacles you face. So tonight we have the beautiful Makini Smith um, as my guest, and I'm so excited to speak with you, Makini. I can see that your microphone is on mute. So yeah, perfect. So this is great. So we're gonna start. We're gonna get right into it. I'm gonna introduce you to the audience, and if, for those of you who are watching, I'm going to ask you to please like and share this video. We are going to be talking about a ton of things that are personal to me as well and to Makini. She's got a story to share. She doesn't even know. You don't even know what questions I'm going to ask you. Like she has no clue. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to her. So Makini Smith is a mindset coach. She is the founder, the owner, the everything of A Walk in My Stilettos, which is like a wonderful podcast enterprise website. You help coach women on business and all that stuff and overcoming obstacles. And I'm just going to read real quick a little bit about you so that people will get to know who you are and what's happening. You coach women entrepreneurs to build impactful brands using their story with mindset, self-publishing, podcasts, and social media. And I know that's like so vague right now because you do a slew of things. I went on your website, I creeped you. So I just want to welcome you to the Healthy Entrepreneur Show. And if you would just like to elaborate a little bit more about yourself, and then we can get right into everything.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much, Maxine, for having me on your show. It's an honor, and I truly appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
I love what you're doing. You know, the Healthy Entrepreneur. I love
Thank you.
everything that it stands for and what it's about. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is fun. Yes. And you know what, before I begin, for those of you who are trying to figure out what the Business Takeout is all about, the Business Takeout is a platform that encourages and supports Black businesses and beyond. If you'd like to learn more about them, you're sure to visit their website at businesstakeout.com. There it is. And there's other podcasts that's on this platform as well that you could tune into and get some insight and inspiration. So Makini, again, thank you. And thanks for your compliment. So you know what? Okay, let's just get right into this. I read your bio and you posted something this morning on social media or sometime today. And I was like, yes, that's what I wanted. So I'm going to read exactly what you wrote, just a little bit of it. You said, and I was just like blown away. You said, I had my first child at 17 and the world expected you to fail. And then you grew up in a government housing surrounded by drugs, crime, and death. Like that just, what? And you experienced toxic relationships and a tough divorce. So in a matter of 12 months, you lost your sister and your grandmother. And they were the ones that helped to raise you. And that you felt broken, defeated. But today, you are an award-winning entrepreneur that's been featured in media across the globe. Had a billboard in Times Square, New York. Are you kidding me? And you're a 4-time author, certified mindset coach, and host of a podcast that ranks in the top 2% of most popular podcasts in the world. Not just reading this because I couldn't even memorize this. And you use your story as a blueprint to help women like you get from where they are. Well, sorry, from where you were to where you are today. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that is powerful. So it is. And I mean, I'm just going to have you walk me through one question I have. The first question I have is this. After all of that, with all the things that you went through, what was the first thing you had to do to just roll up your sleeves and just get going? What was the first thing?
Wow. Yeah, so that was a lot. And the very first thing that I had to do to transition from where I was to where I am, to get out of the pity party. I mean, it's okay for us to cry. It's okay for us to have those days in bed. It's okay for us, to have those moments of being down. But I had to come out of that space
Yes.
Tell myself
Yes.
that I cannot stay there. I had to make the decision that I wasn't going to stay there. That was a
Absolutely.
decision that I had to make.
I like that because I've had to do that as well. Like you have to decide, right? Because you stay in that pity party, then you're going to try to find all the different reasons why this is happening to me, and I have no luck, and it sucks, and all that stuff, right? So, so you had your child at 17, and then you, of course, you grew up, in an environment where you saw a lot of things that most children would, are not seeing these days, right? Um, so what made you decide to become an entrepreneur during a divorce? Because you said you were going through a divorce and you decided to go full-time entrepreneur. How does that relate to a divorce and entrepreneur?
So honestly, I experienced a lot of trauma growing up, but I never looked at it as trauma. I did not know that it was trauma because that was my norm. The things that I had experienced growing up, growing up in government housing, running from, ducking from gunshots and people dying every minute. You're standing at a barbecue in a corner 1 second and people are running the next, and there's someone that's laying on the floor where you were just standing. Like there were so many scenarios and things like that that happened. And then I transitioned when my mother moved us out of that environment and living, well, at the time, we moved out to the town of Markham. And it was like people went into their garages and you didn't know who your neighbors were. And then I started to feel, I'm going to say, lost in a sense, where there was no connection with the community. And I wasn't that kid that I'm going to say I started going down that path of, crime or drugs or anything like that. But I was, I'm going to say, a little bit rebellious.
Oh.
So I met my children's father when I was 15. Well, it was just before my 15th birthday. So we were together for 8.5 years. So although I did have my first child at 17, it's not like I was promiscuous or I wasn't in a relationship. We were together for 8.5 years. But going through all of those things and having, it was almost like one hurdle after another, one hurdle after another. And when I was actually going through my divorce with my son's father, I had been a stay-at-home mom for 5 years. I was out of the workforce. I was like, he was the primary breadwinner. We lived an amazing lifestyle where people from the outside would have been grateful to have. And I was very grateful, but the circumstances around that was not, I'm going to say, what I wanted for my life, basically.
Right.
People may have seen the material things, the properties, the cars, the traveling, all those things, but inside what I was dealing with, the turmoil, the psychological abuse, all of those things was not for me. So when I jumped into entrepreneurship, I had filed for a divorce and I was coming from, like I said, being a stay-at-home mom. No one would hire me. I couldn't get a job. We went straight into selling real estate full-time.
Oh, okay.
And the drive came from, I have 3 kids, a mortgage, a car payment, and a dog. These bills have to get paid. Because of the divorce, he didn't want to financially support anything. And I was like, well, how am I going to be able to provide for these kids and still continue to give them somewhat of a lifestyle of what they're used to? I may not have grown up that way, so I could go back to certain things, but they didn't know that life. So going full force into entrepreneurship for me was the best route that I saw because my kids were young. My son was 4 at the time and he's now 15. But having 3 small children, as an entrepreneur through real estate, I was able to bring my kids with me to open houses. I could have them in the car with me when I was, showing properties. I was able to create the life that I wanted them to continue to have. And it was based off of my work.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you basically wanted to make sure that you were there for your kids, but also be able to provide that lifestyle that they were used to. I totally get it. That's huge for you to go from living a life of the luxury or whatever, and then to having to create that luxury for your kids or that lifestyle, right, on your own. That's amazing. And You said that you had lost your sister as well and your grandmother. So you definitely had some tough times, and you've had to be resilient in all of that, right? So
Absolutely. Like when I started as an entrepreneur, the first 8 months selling real estate, I didn't make any money, but I was
yeah.
getting up every single day and going into the office and, trying to get leads and doing open houses for experienced agents and doing everything that it took every day for 8 months, that consistency of putting in the work. And people are like, you're crazy. You need to get a job. You have 3 kids and a mortgage. What are you doing? And I knew that there was greater out there for me. And I knew
Yeah.
the route that everyone else was telling me to do.
Right,
So
right.
I pushed forward. The last 4 months of that year, I actually sold more real estate than the average realtor sells in 12 months because I was
Nice.
consistent. I put in that effort. But after my first year and having success in real estate and winning awards, in my second year is when my sister passed away suddenly. So
Mm,
that trauma, and when you're an entrepreneur, you are your business. If you're not working, you're not making any money.
no.
And I put I was dealing with so much grief and so much stress, I couldn't function. So for
Hmm.
almost 6 months, again, here I am now not working. I had just hit these, this, I'm going to say, level of success. And my sister passed away and I was emotionally distraught. I couldn't function. So my business was put on hold.
Right.
And finally, 6 months after that, getting back on my feet, working through that grief and changing, I'm going to say, my perspective on life when I thought about her and her legacy. The following summer, my grandmother, who helped raise me since I was like 8 years old, passed away almost very similar to how my sister did. So they were both, in a coma for weeks before they actually were removed from life support. So it was, deja vu, dealing with
Right. Double
all.
trauma.
Yeah.
Compounded. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, wow. So that kind of made you lose some kind of momentum and didn't have that drive anymore. So you decided to do something else, which was?
Yeah. So even after my grandmother passed away and I picked things back up and I tried to move forward in real estate, I was dealing with health challenges. And with those health challenges and the things that I had been through with losing my, I'm going to say, women who were closest to me
Right.
and dealing with the divorce, I started going to, I'm going to say, support groups where there were other
Hmm.
women, sharing their experiences. And after sharing my story so many times, women were like, "Oh my goodness, you need to write a book. You need it's how are you like how did that really happen? Like your life is like a movie." And that's when I decided to write my first book. And even before the book came out, everyone thought I was writing a book about real estate. They're like, "Oh, you're writing a book?" Like they assumed it was real estate related, but my heart had left real estate at that point. And on my own healing journey, when I dug into personal development for myself, I was like, everybody needs to know this information. This is like life changing. And it helped me deal with grief. It helped me deal with the breakup. It helped me deal with all these things. It allowed me to put coping mechanisms into place. And I was like, everybody needs to know this. So
Hmm.
I transitioned from real estate into, funny enough, when the book came out, I had no desire to do public speaking or be on a stage or any of those things. But that allowed me the opportunity to get paid to do coaching, to get paid to speak on global platforms, to get paid to
Hmm.
go around the world and mentor other women. So it opened up other streams of income where I was able to let go of the real estate. I didn't have the physical capacity because of the health challenges, and my mind wasn't there with real estate. I was really passionate about helping people, tap into their potential and to come out of that sunken place that I felt like I was in.
Wow, that's really beautiful. And I think you're saying that when you're writing the book was really your story. And is that why you named it A Walk in My Stilettos?
Yeah, it was definitely,
Yes.
it was originally going to be called A Walk in My Shoes, but when I
Yeah.
was in real estate, the theme for my brand was stilettos. So we
Oh, okay.
it and made it A Walk in My Stilettos, and then the subtitle is How to Get Through the Struggle with Grace.
Yes, I love that actually. And for anyone who's listening, for the audience who's listening, like I said, the entrepreneur show, the healthy entrepreneur show is really all about helping individuals who are on a path to greatness or to success, or just, trying to just make it. And when you're faced with obstacles, you need to just like pull your pants up, figure out a way somehow, just be as strong as you can, because I'm telling you, with our emotional well-being, our physical, and just everything that's happening around us can hinder us from going forward, and we give up. And I'm just so proud of you, the fact that you've pivoted, you've found your strength and your voice and all that, in spite of what was happening to you. So I wrote down all these questions because I don't want to forget to ask you. But thank you for sharing that story about your sister and your grandmother. I think that probably provided you with a lot more perspective on your future, because you talked about when she passed away, you thought, like, what legacy am I going to leave behind? And why was that so important for you to be? Why did you make it? What made you think about it?
So when my sister passed away, I knew that she was important to me, and the pain that I felt, I didn't think that anybody else understood. I have siblings. I mean, both my parents are alive. She had one child. So there were so many people that were grieving her loss, but I felt like nobody understood my pain. And I had people reach out to me on every single platform. And at the time, because I was in real estate, my phone number was on the internet, but I had people that were calling me. I had people that were messaging me through social media. I had people that were emailing me. Everyone wanted to reach out and let me know how she touched them, how she made a difference in their life, how she made them feel, how she supported them when their family didn't, how she, was there for them at the opening of their businesses, or how she believed in them, or sent them motivational videos in the middle of the night, or scripture, anything.
Oh, okay.
That helped me with my grieving process. It made me see that she had an amazing legacy left behind, regardless of, she wasn't interested, or, she wasn't that person that was looking to have media features or any of those things. It was about how she made people feel. And
yes,
I asked myself that question, like, what legacy do I want to leave behind? How do I want to be remembered? And I started doing small things, like sharing, Joyce Meyers has a book called, I think it's Starting Your Day Right. And I was sharing those devotionals. Then I started sharing different scriptures. Then I started sharing different motivational quotes. But I looked at the characteristics of how other people felt special from my sister. And I started to emulate some of those qualities. And then people were like, wow, you're starting to remind me so much of your sister. And I just found so much joy in seeing changes in other people, people who were in a place where they didn't feel good about themselves, helping them to feel better, people who didn't know how to do something, showing them how to do it, asking people like, how can I support you? How can I help you? And those things made me feel like more fulfilled.
Right.
And that's when I got into mentoring and sharing my story on different platforms. And then I decided to get certified for I feel like for my own satisfaction. I wanted to make sure that I had proper systems and tools in place to provide,
absolutely,
to make sure that they're getting the proper help that they needed.
Absolutely. Sometimes when we lose somebody in our lives, it's so devastating. Sometimes it's so hard to even conceptualize how you even move on with life. But as you're telling me the story about your sister, the only thing I can think of is, I think your sister, I think that her passing was something that made you a better, like a better version of yourself, or
Rebirth.
It was a rebirth. That's the word. Yes.
My sister. So most people, when I say that, most people don't believe me, but I'm extremely introverted. And when my sister was alive, I didn't know how to use my own voice. If I had an issue with someone, or if I had a conflict with my parents, I would go to my sister and she would speak for me. Mom was like, what is she, your lawyer? Like, so she was my voice. If I had to return something at a store, I didn't have the confidence to do that. She would have to come with me and do it. So after she passed, I had to find my own voice. I started to use that, and women would tell me, I feel like you're sharing my story, or you're speaking, what I would love to say. I just can't find the words for. And it was like me finding my own voice helped other women to tap into their voice.
Mm-hmm.
Coming from someone who felt like they never had one before, and now using that to help other women amplify their voices, on the podcast and things like that, it's just a complete turnaround. So I definitely put it as a rebirth for me.
It's always so revealing when they say when bad things happen to us, it is sometimes a blessing in disguise, or it's a time for you to have your rebirth, or just to make you into a different person, because it's like a devastating breakup or dealing with abuse or whatever it is that you go through in life. And we sometimes come out better, right? I think we do. It's like it's a lesson that we learn, right?
We choose to. We do.
Yeah, we do. Okay, so I want to go into the relationship part, because I think that's probably one of the biggest struggles you had, right? And I think even as a woman, as anybody who's watching this, who's a woman or man, relationships have the most impact on us than we can even think. No money, no job, no nothing, not even an earthquake. And I'm not trying to dumb it down, but I'm just saying, when it deals with our emotions and our hearts, it is the hardest thing to get through. And especially if we're in a relationship that is toxic. And I listened to your podcast, and I don't remember the title, but it said how to know that you're dealing with a narcissistic person. And I took notes like a good little student, because I thought, oh my goodness gracious, we always say, he or she is so narcissistic or whatever. And you don't really think about it. You don't really think much as to why you think they are, just because they're arrogant. You just say, they're, but there's just, you broke it down so well. And you said you were in a relationship that ended abruptly.
A few, yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you said that you were in a relationship and everything was fine. You just had an argument.
I wouldn't even seen it as an argument. I saw it as a disagreement, but yes.
Okay, no arguments here. And you leave the house. I think you went to work. I don't know what you did. And you come home and it's empty.
Yeah, so we had a disagreement on the Wednesday, and there was like silent treatment until the Saturday. And the Saturday, he lost his cool, wanted to have an argument, but I wasn't responding. And he was upset that I chose not to respond to the anger. And he, I'm going to say, disappeared for the day. And the next day, while I was out at a girlfriend's house, his mother had called me and said that he wanted to come and get a few things. And I said, okay. And when I came home that evening, all of his belongings, everything in the house was gone, from the bedrooms to the basement. So he had moved out.
Right.
Without a conversation.
Okay. And that's a common thing, unfortunately, in some relationships. And I think obviously it's easier to do, because if the person is not invested in the residence or invested in the marriage, let's say, it's like an open door, right? Yeah. It's an escape, right? But I think more so that when you said he gave you the silent treatment and all that, you were dealing with, and I don't know if he was, but you've dealt with a narcissistic person. So you had Narc Abuse. I like that term.
Unfortunately, I feel like I attract them. I've had multiple relationships with narcissistic men, and like you explained earlier, sometimes we throw around that term narcissism, not really knowing what it means. And we just assume, someone either takes a lot of selfies or is a little into themselves. People will automatically label them as narcissistic, but that's not the true meaning of it. And someone who has narcissistic personality disorder, there's multiple traits, and it's almost like there's copycats of that person, because if I explain my stories to you or the characteristics of that person, and you've experienced someone who has narcissistic personality disorder, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about, because you've dealt with the exact same thing. So when I had learned through a couple of therapy sessions and healing sessions after the last series breakup, what that term was, and started learning about the characteristic traits, I had so many women in my DMs either asking for help how to exit narcissistic relationships safely, or letting me know that they had left a relationship and didn't realize that they were with someone, who was narcissistic. And narc abuse, people look at, when they hear about domestic abuse, they assume most times that it's just physical abuse.
Right.
Abuse is mainly psychological abuse, and there are many people who have experienced narc abuse that end up in like mental health institutions because they mess with your mind and make
Absolutely.
you your reality. You feel like you're going crazy. So, and they will tell people that you're crazy. That's why they left. Meanwhile, they drove you crazy. But the levels of abuse with that can be psychological, it can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be financial, it can be sexual, it can be spiritual. There's so many levels to narc abuse that I feel like people throw out around that term, narcissism, and don't really understand the depth and the damage.
Right. I'm trying to remember, you had made reference to when a person doesn't even want to even admit to their wrongdoing. Like they will never take responsibility for the fact that they were wrong. So it's in their minds. They're still thinking that you're wrong.
They believe they're right. They're
right.
Justified with narcissistic personality disorder. It's I believe from everything that I've studied, it's like a part of their brain didn't fully develop. I don't remember what it's called, but basically they lack empathy. They don't have the ability to feel empathy.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they're attracted to empaths, because they can mirror those qualities and those abilities.
Right.
They don't. It's almost like they feel justified in everything that they do. So if they do something wrong, to them, they did it because. So they will constantly justify their wrongdoing. They're never wrong. They're always the victim. So they will make it look like they are the victim because they had to do that because you did this.
Right.
There's never any ownership of what they did. And they do things purely for power and control.
Yes, power and control, definitely. You talked about when people are in a relationship or experience narc abuse, that sometimes it drives them to seek mental help, or like drives them crazy and maybe end up in a mental hospital. And it actually was a trigger for me when you said that, because I remember being in a situation where I didn't feel I needed to be in a psych ward, but I started to second guess my own values and my own, like just my own day-to-day things. I would question if I actually went to that place, or if I actually said something to somebody, or if I actually performed an act, because the person was so indignant in saying something about me, or making me feel like I've done something, right? I see comments, we're going to read them in a second, but it's very interesting how the person can actually play these psychological games on you, and then you start to believe that you did wrong. Like, it's unbelievable. Wow. Yeah, it is. So I'm going to break down. You said there are three exhibits of a narcissistic person, which is an exhibitionist, like, look at me, I'm great. The closet, the covert ones who don't want to admit it, right? And then there's the toxic, the malignant ones, which is the dangerous of them all. And if there are any people on here who've been in a situation like that, you broke this down so well in that podcast, and I want everyone to go on your podcast and just listen to it, because I was just like, she's so right. But you went on to say that there are 9 traits. Yeah. And I'm going to read 9 of them. We're not going to talk about all of them. We're just going to read them. 9 traits of a narcissistic person. And if they express 5 of them, that's a lot, right?
Yeah.
They have NPA, which is narcissistic personality disorder. So exaggerated. So number 1 is an exaggerated sense of self-importance. They believe they're special or unique. Interesting. They require excessive admiration. They lack empathy. Others are envious of them. They behave in an arrogant manner. They're preoccupied with fantasies of success or the perfect mate. And they and then they take advantage of others. I think, I don't know, I only have 8. But anyway, I then you broke down so many aspects of that. And one of the things that I wanted to know about was you said they gaslight you or stonewall you. Mm-hmm. So I'm not gonna, I don't know much about the different, like, how to break down all these things about these people. I do know that I've been around people who have these traits. Mm-hmm. And but the one, have somebody who's narcissistic and they gaslight you. What does that mean?
So okay, let me break down a couple of things. So yes, they typically say of those 9 main traits, if someone has 5 of them, mm-hmm. then they are in that category of narcissistic personality disorder. And I know that there's a lot of talk, and people will say, well, you can't just label somebody. With this, yes, you can. So it's 2021, we have social media, we have all these things. So everyone may possess some of those qualities because we've got social media, we've got entrepreneurs who are building, brands, certain things, but it's having 5 of those things that puts you in that category. And most times it is the people who are closest to those people who will diagnose them, and not actually a doctor or a therapist, because the narcissists, they're so charismatic and they are so good at mirroring other people's qualities and putting on this facade that anyone who knows them on the surface will think they are amazing. They're like, oh my goodness, no, that person would have never done that. Like that's not possible. But the people who live inside of their home with them, whether it be their children or, their spouse, their partner, those people see the true sides of them. That's when they remove their mask. So those people who can really say, yeah, that person is such and such. But with the gaslighting, that term actually came from, I believe it was a old play or movie, but it was where the husband was trying to make the wife feel like she was going crazy. So he would do things like turn on the gas stove, or, he was playing with her sense of reality. So when people talk about gaslighting, it's almost like they're trying to make you feel like you're going crazy. Like that never happened. I don't know what you're talking about. Like they make you question what actually happened. And it's important when you feel like that's happening to you to document things, whether it be screenshots or writing diaries or things so you can go back and actually look at what really happened, because they are good. They are really good. Like whether it be, stealing things, because they lie. They lie, cheat, steal, do whatever they need to get their own way or what they want, because it's always about their needs. But it could be an item, or it could be a money or whatever. Things will go missing, and they will either say they have no idea, like, I don't know what you're talking about, never seen it, you're crazy, you never had that, everything under the sun, to make you question whether or not you had that item or those dollar amount of things. So
that's really interesting, because would you say it's similar to like saying or denying something? Like because I've had that before, where there was a decision that was made, both of us made it, and then I went ahead and did it, and then when it didn't work out, I was like, well, no, you told me to do it. He said, no, I didn't tell you to do it. And I was like,
right, that's gaslighting.
I thought you did. Yeah. And I convinced myself that I didn't.
Yeah.
Because the straight face, and they're like, no, I didn't. You did it. Exactly. Wow. So that's not even taking ownership of
It won't take any ownership of wrongdoing. It's not their fault. It's yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Right. Thanks for that explanation. And the other one was the stone. Yeah.
So stonewalling is like the silent treatment, right? It's acting like you don't exist. And that can be painful emotionally, because it's like you're dead to that person, right? For some people, it may seem like a small thing, but when you are dealing with someone who is, I'm going to say, slowly programming you, because they don't start out displaying any of these things, right? They start out with the love bombing. They start out making you feel like you're the center of their universe. And then they slowly start to gaslight you. And they slowly do things like the stonewalling, where they give you the silent treatment to get you to fall back in order. It's a punishment, per se, right? And it's usually the partner that is like, okay, I don't want this to continue. So the next person will end up apologizing, even if they're not wrong, to end the argument or to end the painfulness of someone treating you like you don't exist.
Wow. So that's, I mean, that is incredible, because silent treatment is the worst form of abuse that you can ever give anybody, whether it's your partner, your friends, or anything like that. I think it's a form of control.
I've had partners that have done that for days. We live in the same house and they would act like I did not exist.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Wow. I mean, I heard this quote before. I've shared it with a bunch of people, and I'm going to share it tonight. When a man or a woman, when you ignore your partner, you're teaching them how to live without you.
Absolutely.
And I think that is like such a huge thing. The silent treatment is the worst thing that you could do to anybody. So, wow. Okay. So what else did I miss in terms of the narc abuse that is common?
There's so many common things. Like I mentioned earlier, the love bombing, they will come in and basically love you exactly how you show that you want to be loved. They will spoil you. They will put it on heavy. And there's a common saying that, no one falls in love faster than a narcissist, because they need to blind you quickly before you can gain that trust. So they want to blind you with, material things and affection and all of those things to basically, put your rose-colored glasses on so that you can't see past their facade. You don't have time to build that trust. So they'll come in heavy and then slowly start to do the gaslighting. There's a lot of common things that they'll do after the fact. Once most people don't even know they're in a relationship with a narcissist until it's ended. But
oh wow,
yeah. So they'll do things like ghost you, so they don't have to take accountability for what they've done. And there's a difference between ghosting someone as the narcissist or a narc victim choosing to go no contact with that toxic person. So what the narcissist will love to do is throw the blame on their past partner and say that person was crazy, that person is the narcissist, and use the fact that you've chosen to protect yourself and go no contact and say that you've ghosted them when they were the ones that have ghosted you.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
So the love bomb, now you're saying that they come into your life and they tell you everything that you want to hear, fall in love, and basically just kind of mimic what you want from a relationship. Is that what you mean? And
so they are very good at mirroring. So
yeah.
every person that a narc gets into a relationship with, that relationship will be different because they're mirroring different people, right? So if they, and they're attracted to people with strong qualities, they're attracted to people who are empaths, who, have large networks or who are faith-based. They are attracted to people that have qualities that they can emulate because they don't have an identity of their own. So when they get into a relationship with someone, they start to act either as that person or do the things that that person loves. And then it's almost like you feel like you're falling in love with your soulmate, the perfect person, because you're falling in love with yourself, essentially, because they've mirrored.
Yes.
Right? So that's why you feel like, oh my God, I love this person. They're the greatest person ever.
Yes.
And that's when they start, the psychological abuse, because you've built trust. And in your head, you're like, well, they love me so deeply. They would never do that to me. But then over time, when they start to implement all these toxic behaviors, you are still ruminating and hoping to get back that person who love bombed you in the beginning. So you're holding on. You have hope that things are going to go back to that point, but it never will, because they are out here, finding their new source of supply. They're out there, like I said, lie, cheat, steal. They do all of that. So, they're out interacting with other people of the opposite sex, looking for their future victim, pretending to be kind, nice, being in their DMs, doing favors, doing whatever.
Right.
So
Interesting. I mean, from a woman's perspective, as you're talking, I'm only thinking about a man this time. And usually I don't usually like to put the blame on a man, because I think women are capable of doing just the same.
Very much so.
And how does a narcissistic woman, I don't know what it is. I don't want to sound like I'm, being biased, but I don't know.
So narcs, it can be male or female.
For sure.
I actually interviewed a male on my IGTV who shared his story about being married to a narcissistic woman. And unfortunately, it's almost like society's views will be that there are more men out here that are narcissistic because as women, we are more vocal about our experiences in relationships. But the men aren't being as vocal. They will either just leave the relationship and be like, that girl, whatever. But I've spoken to so many men that are hurt and heartbroken and still devastated and afraid to trust and afraid to love and be vulnerable because they had past relationships with narcissistic women and didn't realize the damage that was done there. I've spoken to men that know other men that committed suicide because they were in a toxic relationship with a woman that either, tried to destroy their character or made them, look or feel a certain way, and they couldn't handle it. But as society, we don't address men's emotional needs the same way that we do with women. So it's more passive to be like, labeling the men as racist.
And I wanted to say that because we don't hear that. We don't hear of that, and I never want to leave the men out, and hence why I have that group, Bellas and Fellas. But I think even amongst men, I wonder if they even discuss that or between themselves. Because I think if a man, well, let's just assume that the average man who may have a relationship with a woman who was like that, he would just probably chalk it off as, she's a bitch or she's crazy, right? That's without realizing that it was narc abuse.
Yeah, I did a series of different IGTV interviews with people on the same topic, and I've done a couple on the podcast, but I've had so many men reach out to me privately asking questions because they are severely emotionally hurt and they don't want to show them the outside. And, men show emotion differently. So people will say that this guy is, he's angry, he's weird, he's whatever, because the way that he chose to deal with his emotions, but they will open up about their experience and they're like, everything that you said, that was her, that's what she did. So it's almost like they're now having these aha moments that, oh my goodness, I was in a relationship with someone who was completely narcissistic. And not like narcissistic personality disorder, it's in the same category as sociopaths. So I will have a lot of people that say to me, well, how could they do this? Like, I don't understand. No, you're not going to understand because they are the ones that are crazy. And if you understand, then you might be leading down that path. Like you are not going to understand why they do the things that they do because that's not your character. That's not who you are.
Interesting. There were a few questions that came up on the screen from the viewers, and if we can just see if we can address some of them. So we can just, if anybody has any questions. Okay, so Arlette says, yes, I can't even see that, to be honest with you. If you can read that for me. We definitely, I can't see that. It's so tiny. I'm using my cell phone. Sorry, guys.
You definitely rise by lifting others.
Oh, yes, we do. Thank you, Arlette. Another one. Do you want to read that one? Can't see it.
I have a voice to help others, but not myself.
Awesome. Thanks, English.
Marla says, sometimes the lesson is for us, and sometimes we are the vessel to deliver the message to someone else. Walking with God will always be with purpose.
They're coming up.
So true. Meaning of narcissist, victim. Chris Rudd, two of my favorite and inspiring individuals.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, guys. Oh, Chadwick, what did Chadwick say?
Do narcissist victims become narcissistic?
Ooh, good question.
I have read that it is possible sometimes because they become so vigilant about not becoming the victim again that they can start to, I guess, act as their abuser did. And that's why I feel it's extremely important once you realize that you've experienced that to seek help, to get counsel, therapy, and to basically look at all of the healing mechanisms that are out there. Like this past year, I have been so vigilant and so purposeful about finding ways to heal and to focus on healing because I don't ever want to be as any of my abusers have been.
That's, you know what? I never really thought about that because so that's why going to seek therapy is good, so that you are aware of the potential that you could become narcissistic too.
Yeah.
Interesting. And that would probably only be for your own protection
Yeah.
or fear.
So they say that, okay, so let's say you have two kids that experience childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
One kid grows up to be an empath and wants to nurture and heal the world and protect everybody and love on everybody because they don't want them to feel what they felt. And then you may have the other kid who took that same experience and they become completely narcissistic as a defense mechanism, right?
Yes.
So it's like the damage that they do now, they attract each other, right? And then the damage that is done. So now the empath, if they are not careful because they've been hurt and gone through such trauma, it can be where they start to put up these barriers and start to treat people in that manner as a protection mechanism. Mm-hmm. So you don't want that to happen. Like I said, I definitely recommend therapy.
Yeah, I could see that. And I mean, it's very important because you were in an abusive situation and it has affected you mentally. So yeah. Wow. And what's the other question that Chadwick has?
What kind of counsel can one get when it was so hard to determine and prove the person was a narcissist? So one thing I definitely recommend with any type of therapist, it's almost like finding the right fit. Interview different therapists. And if you've been in a narcissistic relationship, if you experience narc abuse, you want a therapist that understands that. Because if they don't, there are so many things that they may misunderstand and not know when you're talking about your situation or your scenario. I've seen so many things play out in the media recently where people are talking about, from someone who studied the stuff, it's clear that, one person was a complete narcissist and is abusing the other person. But then other people are like, oh, well, they're both toxic. They both just need to get help. So they're dismissing the victim. And it's almost becomes a sense of victim shaming because when the victim is now doing certain things, they're not getting the help or the support or the love that they need.
Right, right.
Why didn't you leave? Or why didn't you do this? Or why didn't you do that? Questioning the victim rather than getting them the help that they need.
Wow. Yeah, that is so, so true. Wow. I love how you broke that down. And I saw a question. We're running out of time. Christopher Rudd said, I don't know can you read that for me?
I'm finding my timeline is full of what seems to be narcissistic personalities looking for adoration, which has led me to being more restrictive with whom I interact with. I call it protecting my space.
That, you know what, Christopher, I totally agree with that. We definitely have to be mindful of that and protecting our space because there's a lot of people out here on social media with different motives, different vibes, different energy. And more importantly, I find that with everything that's going on in social media, pre-COVID, post-COVID, our emotions, our sensitivities are a lot different now. And either you're very vocal about it or you're very you're keeping it to yourself and you're suffering. There's just so many things happening with everybody. So protect your energy, everyone. Protect yourself from anything that you find is not sitting right in your heart. And just making sure that you're keeping inventory of how you feel inside emotionally, right? I have one last question to ask you, and then we're going to talk about one other thing in your book. But what do you do for self-care now?
Oh, wow. I have a self-care routine that I do. I have a routine for the morning and I have a routine for the evening.
Hmm.
And since going through that last breakup from that serious relationship, I have implemented so many things that I do, I'm going to say, on a daily basis. And I break down my self-care for mind, body, and soul. So
Love that.
it includes things like prayer, meditation, affirmations, actively practicing my gratitude journal, drinking lots of water between having my cup on my desk or I have a 1 liter gallon of bottle that I sip throughout the day so that I stay hydrated. I spend as much time as I can outside, walking
Mm.
in nature. I try to find conservation areas or by the water because that helps to ground me, to calm my
Hmm.
mind. My Fitbit makes me pay attention to my heart rate. I pay attention to how I feel when I'm around other people. So I'm very mindful right now about, like you said, energy. So I spend a lot of time alone. I spend a lot of time reading, listening to things that lift my spirits, whether that be positive music or whether it be a podcast or, anything to help lift my energy, my spirit, my vibration. It's very important to me because after dealing with all of that, I was in a very low place, like
Yes.
very low place. And I'm grateful to be here today. And that's because I have all of those self-care things put into place.
I like how you say that you break it down into mind, body, and spirit. And that's so important because your mind is what is going to control everything that you do, and then keeping your body active and just loving on yourself and getting spiritual with, you said, nature, like it grounds you, and being by the water because it's an element, right? So I mean, this is why when we get still, get mindful, go deep and reflect, we're able to overcome obstacles and deal with our trauma or whatever happens to us. And I mean, you have been through a lot, and I don't know if anybody else here who's watching can relate to this, but I hope that everyone takes this podcast, listen to it again, get some feedback, get some help, reach out to Makini. She has a gratitude journal. Please go on her website and get yourself a copy or whatever, any of her books, because I think she's a huge inspiration. I've been following you for a couple of years, and I keep saying, I want to be on your podcast. I know it'll happen one
Maybe
day.
on the podcast this year.
Exactly, because you're so busy. But I'm so proud of you.
Thank
And I want to thank you again for being a guest on my show. For anyone to reach out to you, they certainly can. I think the producers put it up there. A Walk in My Stilettos is your name of your book and the podcast as well, or is it?
I keep it simple so they can find it all under Walk in My Stilettos or Makini Smith.
Yes, perfect, exactly. And I want to thank the audience for watching, and thank you so much for everybody who had questions or comments. Makini, you are a light, and I'm so appreciative of you for coming on here. I know you're a busy lady, so thank you again.
Thank
And
you.
yes, so everyone, good night and stay well, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.